Okay.
So I want to talk about your sign. What's your sign about, Tiger Riders? Because my dog is named Tiger. Is that what that's
Oh,
about?
yeah. I'm not talking about riding your dog. Um,
Okay.
that's weird. Also, your dog's too small for anyone to successfully ride. I think they would crush poor Tiger.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a Chinese proverb which is I had to look it up to make sure I got it correct. Although it's a translation, so I guess I could have just paraphrased and it wouldn't matter. Which is, "He who rides a tiger is afraid to dismount." And the idea is you start down a path on something, and that thing is actually quite powerful, and you're kind of stuck on it after that, right? Like you're on the tiger, and you better stay on the tiger because getting off the tiger could be deadly. Um, and the reason that I'm thinking about that actually relates to our cover art, which is a picture of Joe Rogan. By the way, I chose Joe Rogan hoping that the guy who was mad that we had Edward Snowden on or whatever it was, what was the image that someone was mad that we didn't have the person?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, they'll be really mad. I'm going to choose Joe Rogan, and that person can think that Joe Rogan's on our show today, even though we, didn't advertise that at all. Uh, but I do want to talk about Joe Rogan because so that he signed this, like, at least tens of millions, maybe it was $100 million deal with Spotify for licensing his show, right? And he's going to move to Spotify. Well,
Yes. Yes.
uh,
I've heard that
Spotify's having some
Spotify has
trouble
had
with
10
this.
meetings. Yeah. So they've had, this is what I heard, and then you share the news that you found. I read last night that they've had 10 staff meetings at least because the SJWs who work for Spotify are upset that
Yes.
he's being hosted there, and they're calling his guests transphobic even though they can't point to anything transphobic or any factual errors in. He had Abigail Shriver on,
Right.
who, if you guys remember, we got to do an interview with Buck Angel, who recommended her book to us.
Which
What's the
which
name
may
of the
be on
book,
a book
Carter?
club of ours sometime. This is the book, Irreversible Damage.
It will be Irreversible Damage. So he had her on as a guest. They
Yep.
can't point to any factual errors with her book. They can't point to anything transphobic and explain why it's transphobic. But they're just mad, and they're doing what babies do. Babies who have jobs that pay them quite a lot, and they're complaining to the upper management at Spotify that they don't want Joe Rogan to be hosted there. And I read. Well, show me the news article you found because I wanted to read something to you about
Well, I
this.
just
It's
want to
funny
show
you
you.
want to talk about this because I read this too.
Yeah, I do, and it's related to
Yeah.
my sign. So, um, here's just like some. Here's where kind of rumors were starting on 4chan, and then there was a Vice article. I think it was Vice. But apparently, it's the New York office, so they handle the media, and the Stockholm office handles the tech. So it's the New York office that's revolting, and they want to go on strike now. Half the office apparently wants to go on strike. Um, because
How about quitting?
Yeah, go ahead, quit. And then the article, yeah, this is the Vice article about the CEO. This is what you're talking about, having internal meetings. Some of the questions were leaked. Now, by the way, I don't know if you know this. They've already removed some episodes of Joe Rogan from Spotify. The ones with Alec Jones and Gavin McGinnis. Um, and they are complaining. By the way, management says this is so it's like almost sweetly naive of management. The fact that we aren't changing our position doesn't mean we aren't listening. It just means we made a different judgment call. Yeah, that'll work. Good job. I don't know who advised you that's going to work against the mob, but nice.
Fire them. Fire them, somebody says in chat. Fire them. These
Right,
people think that their jobs, that they're irreplaceable. They're not. You're a glorified paper pusher. You're
right.
not doing anything that, I mean, I'm not discounting that there's hard work to be done at Spotify. I just happen to know a lot of people who work in entertainment. I know some who work at Spotify. I'm not calling out this person. I'm just saying a lot of people in these jobs get paid a lot of money to do nothing. There's like 10%. What's that stat we've heard before about how at any company 10% of the people do 90% of the work? The
It's
people
well,
who
it's
are
the
complaining
yeah,
are the people who are
it's
not doing
that's right.
90% of the work. They have time to complain and organize meetings and write letters about their feelings. They're not contributing anything to your company. Get rid of them and bring in a hard worker.
It's the Pareto distribution. Just to be
Yeah.
technically correct, it's the square root of the number of people produces half of the labor on average in every organization. So
Okay.
if you have 100 people, 10 of them are doing half of the work. Um, and and actually that holds true then for the next segment. So if you take the remaining 50, the square root of 50 of those people are doing half of that work, right? So it's but yes, we've seen the bloat, and the bloat at a lot of these companies, we've talked about this before, comes through HR departments and whatever. But so let's go back to the Vice article really quickly though. So they have banned some episodes already. So we've removed Alex Jones and Gavin McGinnis episodes. They're complaining about, this is how it works, by the way. They're complaining about his episode with Stefan Molyneux, and if you'll notice, every little thing, like every time some crazy social justice platform makes a decision, they use the previous crazy decision to justify why that decision's correct. So the SPLC says, oh, he amplified scientific racism. Now, by the way, one of the reasons that they claim he amplified scientific racism is he had Charles Murray on his show a few years ago.
Oh
By the
God.
way, we're going to release a Charles Murray interview possibly next week. We had Charles Murray on our show, so I guess we'll be accused of this. That then turned into, now he's the SPLC says Molyneux is a racist. And then so YouTube banned Molyneux, but now Vice is saying, well, Rogan should, like Spotify should ban the Rogan episode with Molyneux because YouTube banned him and SPLC banned him. Therefore, so it's just it's like academic papers that cite their friends over and over again,
Yeah.
and suddenly there's a body of work that people cite and it looks legitimate, but underneath there's not a lot of legitimacy.
And the SPLC is full of crap. We've talked about this before. The SPLC, if they ever had any legitimacy, and I don't know enough about their history to know if they did. I used to think they did. I'll put it that way. I used to think they had legitimacy. We've seen in the past at least 5 years, they are full of crap. They're a propaganda outlet. And what they do is they incite and stoke hatred against individuals. They put people on these hate lists, like a target list. And then you get SJWs who refer to them and say, see, look what the SPLC said. Yeah, of course. They're just your propaganda arm.
Right.
Why would you trust anything that they say?
Right.
Can I read something real quick from this one article?
About the Joe Rogan
BusinessInsider.com. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
This is something the whiny employees have sent in. So Vice said that its sources shared questions that had been submitted for the Q&A portion of one of these meetings at Spotify, these employee meetings. The questions, which shorten the name of the podcast to JRE, suggest that friction is building between Spotify's leadership and its staff over the podcast. Well, yeah, again, leadership. Hey, leadership, be a leader. Fire these people who are not adding anything to your productivity. Okay, quote, here's one of the whiny employees, quote, why has Spotify chosen to ignore Spectrum ERG's guidance about transphobic content in the JRE catalog, end quote. Again, they don't say what's transphobic. They don't make an argument. And then, but this is the best one. Many LGBTQAI plus ally Spotifyers feel unwelcome and alienated because of leadership's response in JRE conversations. What's your message to these employees? Hey, my message is, I don't care about your feelings. How about that? This is such an entitled millennial social justice way of thinking. I don't feel welcome. I feel alienated. Hey, maybe something's wrong with you. Like maybe it's you. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, so yeah, I mean, so that's the basic deal with that's going on. I think you probably captured the quotes that are in this article from employees. If you want to read about it,
I did.
Well, yeah, we'll put the. I think the by the way, every other article I've seen references this Vice article. I think Vice is the one that got the details from the employees. But they yell at him for this is weird. He's mischaracterized the reason for Kylie Jenner or Caitlyn Jenner's transition, saying it was because she was around her daughters, Kylie Jenner and Kendall Jenner, that he describes as crazy bitches. Now, that sounds like he was making a joke, but of course Vice has to make it sound like
he said it was.
He's mischaracterizing it. Okay. right? So anyway,
It was a joke. And
yep, of
he's,
course it was.
if case they forgot, he's a comedian.
Right, of
And the
course.
funny thing about social justice warriors is they are the first to claim that something is a joke. Okay, so they're allowed to to say awful things and say it's just comedy, but of course we know they're hypocrites, and they purposefully ignore when something is said in jest, even when it's said by a comedian. They ignore that and they pretend like this is a serious factual claim. No, it's a joke. I
Right,
saw, when Joe Biden said that if you don't vote for him, you're not black.
right,
I saw Wanda Sykes defend that on Twitter and say that's just he's just joking.
right.
Okay, so that we're supposed to take that as a joke, even though he's a presidential candidate. He's not a comedian. I'm going to extend you good faith and an olive branch and say, okay, Joe Biden tried to make a joke by saying you're not black if you don't vote for him. But then when it comes to your fellow comedian making a joke, you guys are like, no, it must be a factual claim.
Yep, yep. But the interesting thing is here. Look. I think Joe Rogan should actually intentionally now start interviewing people that are wrong thinkers, because I mean the worst
Yes.
thing that can happen to him is he keeps the money and doesn't have to be on Spotify. I don't know, but according to Joe Rogan's announcement, he says Spotify, they want me to just continue doing the way I'm doing it right now, and he added it's just a licensing deal, so Spotify won't have any creative control over the
Which
show.
is great.
Um,
Which is great.
so yeah, so
And he is interviewing wrong thinkers. He did one with Edward Snowden, and he just released one with Douglas Murray from Madness of Crowds.
good.
And I listened to clips of that one. I haven't listened to the whole thing, but it's excellent. What I heard was excellent.
Yeah, right. So I think you should continue to do it. Um, okay, so now I can go full circle to my sign, which is I think a lot of companies are think that they can ride the woke wave and make some money and get some cool points in the market, and all will be good, and they're stoking this fire, and what will happen is they will end up with a company full of employees who don't want to do their work unless they bow to the woke mob. They will lose control over their own companies. And by the way,
Yeah.
I know that you can say like, "Oh, just fire them. They don't do any work." I'm not sure that's possible. A lot of people actually do work, and they have these views. They get riled up by the rabble rousers who don't do work. So there's engineers or other people who are doing work, and they've bought into this ideology because the HR department has been pushing it forever. Yeah, fire all the HR people, sure.
No,
But
I think Red Bull showed us you can fire these people, and even if they're engineers, set a precedent. If you're wasting company time with 10 meetings about your feelings,
sure, look,
find
I'm
other
not saying
engineers.
you can't fire them. I'm
Yeah.
saying it's not trivially easy to if it's 50% of the employees in New York, that's
Mhm.
not a trivial thing to fire
You don't have to
50% of your
fire
staff.
all 50. Start with the loudest troublemakers, the ones who are the least productive, and make an
Sure, and
example.
hope that it goes
Because
down. Absolutely.
there
Absolutely.
are people like you said who get pulled into it, who start virtue signaling because this becomes the accepted
Yes.
predominant religion at work. This becomes the culture at work. They're supposed to virtue signal and speak social justice. If you start taking out the high priests and priestesses in your company who are dragging everybody down and wasting your company time with this crap, then those who are just followers will stop preaching it because you will have changed the culture.
Yeah,
You will have said this is not the religion of our company. But
I
they are woke though. I mean, they've been ever since the George Floyd thing. They're one of the companies. It actually surprised me they did this deal with Joe Rogan because they're one of the companies that's been virtue signaling to me since George Floyd when I opened them up. Did you want to see our Black Lives Matter playlist? No, I did not.
right, but again, this is not I strongly suspect that the people who make the higher level decisions, like signing a multi tens of $1 million deal with Joe Rogan, which probably needs to be signed by the CEO or at least they're involved. Like it's a big deal, right? That's not some VP level person doesn't make that decision. Um, so I highly suspect that at that level, um, they're just kind of like going along with whatever the marketing department says we should be doing. And if the marketing department is like, oh yeah, we need to be BLM, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, okay, uh, sure, I don't care. When they say we need to spend $100 million on a podcast guest or a podcaster, they say that, oh, okay, then the CEO is involved. And what this means to me is likely that the CEO is a pragmatist. Also, just look at his responses. Like, he's talking to these people as if they are here to have a reasonable conversation. So, like, that indicates to me he's clearly naive. And my guess is just a pragmatist who thinks that he can have it both ways, that he can ignore the cultural cancer that's being foisted at the company, that's taking over the company, and still make decisions that he believes are in best economic interest. Obviously, they think it's worth it to have Joe Rogan on Spotify exclusively. Like, you don't pay that kind of money if you don't think you're going to make a hell of a lot more from it. So you got to imagine, if they're paying $100 million for Joe Rogan, they think they're going to make two, three, four, $500 million off of this easily, if not more. So that's a big deal. You don't make that deal if you don't think that's a good economic deal for yourself. So to me, I look at this and say, oh, this is an example of a pragmatist who sat at the top of a company, maybe a few pragmatists, who rode the tiger, who were like, oh, is this where sentiment is going culturally? Sure. Let's stoke the fire. Let's say the things. Let's virtue signal. Do whatever we need to do. I don't care. Whatever. We're just here making our money. We need to say X, Y, and Z to get people excited about us. Fine. We'll say X, Y, and Z. Ideas don't matter. We're just going to do our thing. And here they are. And look, yeah, I think you should. Obviously, I agree with you. You should fire the people. But eventually, you may find yourself in a position where the corporate culture is so dysfunctional because you've allowed this cancer to metastasize so much that can you right the ship? Yeah. Will it be painful? You bet. It could get very painful. And maybe you won't even be able to right the ship eventually. Like, you could have a board of directors who comes in and says, you're proposing on doing what? You want to fire all these people? You're like, or even halfway through your program, the board of directors just votes that they have no confidence in you, and like, you're gone. So, because they're usually more cowardly than CEOs, so they're just going to bow to them. They're more likely to bow to the mob. They're a committee. So, to me, this is just an example of like, this is why pragmatism isn't actually pragmatic in the long run. Pragmatism is like a short-sighted way to look at things, and you think that you can ride this tiger and make your money and get your money from virtue signaling and kowtowing to the mob, but the mob will turn on you. You'll get stuck, and you'll end up having to ride it all the way to wherever the tiger wants to go, and that's going to be likely not in line with your bottom line, success as a company, personal goals, basically anything that you want. So that's all.